Hello, good evening. My name is Marialuisa Monda. I'm an events assistant at the New York Society Library. It's New York City's oldest library and cultural institution. We hope that you come and visit us soon, especially for many events which are open to the public, and our current exhibit, Fabulous Fashion, which is our first fashion show. I want to welcome you all tonight to our first ever romance book panel with 6 extraordinary romance writing stars. I am a huge lover of romance, an avid reader, so I believe we're going to have a fabulous conversation. A note before we officially begin is that we're going to keep you all muted. However, feel free to interact in our chat box, especially inserting your questions. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on romance. Okay, so, and also, we would like you to, of course, we would like to, as I said, we would like to hear your thoughts and opinions. However, we want to remind you, again, to keep muted just in case. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our writers. Never Been Kissed, a novel by Timothy Janovsky, published on May 3rd by Source Books Casablanca. It is a debut novel. Here for the Drama, a novel by Kate Bromley, out since yesterday, June 21st, Graydon House Harlequin. Fake It Till You Bake It, a novel by Jamie Wesley, also out since yesterday, June 21st, St. Martin's Press. The Romance Recipe by Ruby Barrett, coming out on July 12th by Karina Doris, Harlequin's exclusively LGBTQIA+ romance line. Twice a Quinceañera, a novel by Yamile Saied Méndez, coming out on July 26th, Kensington Books. The Hookup Plan by Farrah Rochon, coming out on August 2nd, Hachette Book Group. A round of applause for our writers. Yay. Okay, so welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. As I said, this is our first romance panel, and I believe that for me, it seems that romance books are one of the, if not the, but one of our biggest genres that many people seem to be reading. I actually read in the statistics not too long ago, 2018, the Romance Writers of America said that romance books, it's a $1.08 billion industry each year. However, it seems that romance books are not considered serious reading. So I find that very odd, slightly funny, but odd. So I guess my first question for you guys, whoever wants to answer this, is that why do you believe that this is, why this genre isn't taken seriously? And whoever wants to begin.
I'll go. I think we all probably know. It's like, who's gonna answer this question?
Exactly.
It's a majority women, written for a majority women audience. That's the short and not so sweet answer. Mm-hmm. But personally, in these last few years, I've actually embraced that not too serious, because there's too much serious in the world and no one wants serious right now. They want to escape. So call us not so serious if you want to. That's what people need right now. So, but that's what personally, and I know it's not just personally, I know a lot of people feel this way. It's because it's majority women written, and for that audience. Thank you, Timothy, for being the male on the there are representing, because there are male readers, but that's how I see it.
No, and completely fair. And also, I failed to mention, we are recording this event, so don't worry, you will definitely rewatch this event. However, going back to your comment, I think it's very fair. And I have read in a couple of sources like Book Riot that 16% of readers are male identified. So we do have various readers, but it is dominated by female identified readers. So I think it's a very fair assessment. Who else wants to share their thoughts?
I think also like what we talk about is like love, and obviously for a romance to be considered a romance, it has to have a happily ever after. And I think it's really easy to sort of like stick your nose up at the idea or at the concept of love and happiness when we get sort of jaded by the world. I mean, like Farrah said, like we all need some escapism. And I think it's like, I think it's kind of like easy to lean into that sort of feeling of, remember when you're like a teenager and, you're like too cool for everything. Like, I think we still kind of have that knee-jerk reaction. So I think that because we're talking about love and because we're talking about happily ever afters, that's sort of seen as this like silly, frivolous, flippant sort of thing, when it's actually like the opposite. Like love and happily ever after, like love is like the thing that's keeping us all from exploding right now. So I mean, it's keeping me. So like why would we turn our nose up at that? But I think that sort of, it's easy to have that knee-jerk reaction and to be negative and to let the jaded world make us jaded. But yeah, it's just people don't feel comfortable maybe talking about love and being happy, which, I mean, therapy is an option for them.
That's another fair point. And it's so true because we have love stories from all the way from, I want to say, since storytelling began. I mean, I believe I told you this at the icebreaker, or maybe through email, but I studied folklore back at NYU Gallatin, and you have love stories in fairy tales, mythology, legends, and similar platforms. So it's a high in demand genre. So I always found it kind of funny that there is this sense of judgment, especially when you have beloved stories that have transitioned onto Disney and Pixar, for example, those outlets and that people love to watch. For example, The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. I mean, some of the themes are a bit iffy, but it still applies. Oh, and I believe, Shamel, I think you wanted to say something. I saw you.
No, I was gonna say the same thing, that
awesome.
Love and about feelings, and they get put down. But I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but true to the tools of our craft, which are tropes and archetypes, love is the main thing that will save us all. And at the end of the day, no matter how jaded people are, I have friends who I married young. I'm in my almost mid-40s. I have friends who are just starting to form their families. And I know somebody who just found the love of their lives when at age 85. No matter what people say, every time we hear a love story in real life, people smile and they're happy.
Very true.
So even if people have been super successful and achieved all the accolades, if they have not found that goal of having a significant other beside them, that's something that they still want to achieve, even if they say they don't. So
no, definitely. And that reminds me of a certain character from one of our authors who is looking for love, who is looking for their first kiss. So Timothy, would you like to take the spotlight and discuss your novel?
Sure, yeah. So Never Been Kissed is my debut novel. tells the story of Ren Roland. He's never been kissed, never been in love, but he wants his movie perfect ending more than anything. And so on the night of his 22nd birthday, he gets very drunk and very nostalgic, and he sends emails to all the boys he crushed on before coming out of the closet. And through that interaction, he gets one response from his number one pre-coming out crush, Derek Haverford. And through that exchange, he finds out that they're going to be working together at their hometown Vintage Drive-In movie theater. A special project to help save the drive-in draws them together, and Ren thinks that maybe this is the summer that he's going to get his perfect kiss before the credits. And I think your question was kind of perfectly suited to the book, because Ren lives in a world of rom-coms. He lives and dies by Nora Ephron, and he I think one of the things as a character, and both myself, that draws me to romance in general is the vulnerability that comes with it. And I think sometimes people don't take romance seriously. And Ren is trying to get others around him to take romance seriously because he has this perfect imagining of his first kiss, is that being vulnerable can be scary. And I think it's more accepted to be scared by the man in the mask wielding the machete than it is to be scared about discussing our feelings. So that's just my 2 cents on the question.
Oh, and wonderfully said. And actually, what I loved about, again, you of course you're the author, so you definitely hit the nail on the head. But for me, I was so struck by the characters, especially Vern, because usually when you look at a male identified character, whenever they have a love interest, whenever they're trying to understand their wants and needs romantically, sexually, and whatnot, it's usually how do I say this? It's usually not expressed in an unhealthy way, slightly aggressive way. So I was wondering, was this your intention to show this character as a hopeless romantic who yes is looking for his first kiss, but at the same time is very just a wholesome character?
Sure. I think for me, because it's a queer romance, I very much come to it from a space of being a hopeless romantic myself. And I think Ren refers to himself as a hopeless romantic, heavy on the hopeless. And that's because he is kind of infatuated with the idea of love, but has not yet kind of grasped for himself what that looks like in his life. And so for me, and one of the themes of the book is that LGBTQ folk often don't exist on the same relationship timeline as their straight peers. And oftentimes I find that in works of queer romance, and maybe Ruby wants to speak to this as well in the romance recipe, is that like our characters can't often fit the archetypes, because the archetypes were kind of created mostly for cis heterosexual male-female pairings. And so, and even the tropes, a lot of times we have to do the work to kind of, I don't know what the word is, but kind of dig into them in a way that feels honest to our authentic lived experience. And so for me, I populated this book with my friends, with the people that I surround myself with the world and the hope and the love that I want to see. And so I don't think it was necessarily intentional that I go against any sort of like alpha male type archetype. But I do think that it is important for young people and romance readers to have male characters who are kind of very vulnerable and open about their feelings.
And it's written well done. I felt, as I mentioned before, we were talking a little bit earlier just now before while we were waiting, that about which characters we resonate with, and I definitely felt a connection with actually with everybody, Avery, Brandon. Sorry, you have to read the book to find out who these people are. Sure. but as mentioning, and I think another theme that I love in romance is that it's not just love between the person, your love interest, but also with family, friends, as you mentioned before, but also places. And I was curious, was a drive-in always your location all
Yeah.
along?
Yeah. So, well, I knew Ren was a film nerd, so that kind of narrowed down my search. But also, I'm a film fan myself. Love going to the movies. And during COVID, when movie theaters were shut down and it was unsafe to be in those spaces, I was lucky enough to be staying in a place where there were drive-in movie theaters, and I got to still have the communal experience of watching movies with others. And I just found that to be very comforting. And the vibes there, just they're impeccable. They're great. They're summery. They're sweet. They're nostalgic. I definitely have a latent crush on Danny Zuko, and so that definitely infiltrates my my kind of romanticism of the drive-in. I'm not that he's prime example of the maybe the machismo you were just referring to, that I didn't write in the book. But I would say that, yes, that was always the idea. And I was really interested in talking about, especially Ren being kind of a grandpa of the friend group, this idea of like things that maybe old are not obsolete. So I'm definitely, we're talking about 35 millimeter film. We're talking about, a woman who made her directorial debut in the 70s, who left film and is now making her return as an elderly woman. Like, just, I kind of wanted to use the drive-in as a jumping off point for just, exploring how, just because things upgrade or modernize doesn't mean what's come before is not chock full of heart and hope and history that we still need to cherish and appreciate.
No, definitely. And speaking of Alice Kelly, who is the old lady, who's the female director who makes a return, what I thought was interesting is that I believe currently, I can't say how long ago was it, but there is an element of the paranormal in your book. I won't say again, read Never Been Kissed to find out why I say this. And what is something that is definitely prevalent now that is coming out more is that it seems that people who are considered others, such as LGBTQIA+ and people of color, they're using the paranormal, which was once depicted them as monsters, now as a tool to tell their story. So I thought it was a great note in your book. That's like, oh, I see what you did there. I mean, originally I was like, oh, this is I love this movie. I wish it was a real movie. But then looking back, I'm like, oh wow, this is that, like, I wonder if this was connected somehow. So if you do write a screenplay for this particular movie, please do.
Thank you. I'll add it to my list of projects.
That would be lovely. Thank you. Anyway, thank you so much for coming up. I'll definitely call upon you again, because I think this is a great layaway to what do you guys think about Amazon, and how does it impact your writing on, with romance books? Because I know there's I have a love and hate relationship with with Amazon. Not romance, I love romance, but love and hate, sorry. So I'm based on a conversation that we had last time. I'm curious to hear about, since Timothy, the drive-in has a similar situation where they're being, well, I don't want to say, but they need help. And I feel similarly, indie bookstores need help compared to Amazon books. So I'm curious what you guys think. Do you have a similar relationship with Amazon, love and hate like me, or do you love Amazon? Do you think that has helped with with books, or I'm curious to hear.
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah. It has helped in general because they were the ones who really drove home ebooks. Like, ebooks existed before Amazon really got on board, but they're the ones who pushed it to where it is today. We wouldn't be here without Amazon. So yes, they've done a lot of good. I am a big proponent of competition in all aspects. I don't like monopolies and whatever we're talking about.
So, but I also understand why people buy from Amazon. They make it very, very convenient, and you can't be mad at them for understanding what their customer wants and needs. With that said, yes, we love our indie bookstores, and it's just it's so hard. You know, they continue to try to compete. And I remember, oh my goodness, I feel old now. I'm like, when was it? I remember maybe 10 years ago. I don't know. I don't feel that ebooks were starting to really become a thing. And like in Target, they would have like these little cards that you could buy and download your ebook. So other stores tried. That didn't work because you can't do that now, as far as I know. But they try. It's just hard. Amazon, they know what they're doing and they give it to the customer.
No, definitely. And speaking of audiobooks, I actually published, it was 2017, I believe, Publishers Weekly, there was a statistic that there was a 22.7% of audiobook sales, which is basically $2.5 billion alone. And one of the most popular genres is romance. So I definitely hear you on that. And again, like I do have this love and hate. I understand. I agree. It is convenient for people. And sometimes there are places that don't have an indie bookstore. They just don't. And Amazon is the way to go. So I would never gatekeep, but I do try to support my indie as much as possible. And I feel we all agree to that. Yeah. Anyone else have I don't know, maybe Amazon's listening, so maybe we shouldn't talk about Amazon. Maybe we shouldn't talk anymore. But I just was curious because I like to poke the bear. And I feel romance books are the same. We like to reveal our truest self. Oh, Ruby, go for it.
That like Amazon, as Jamie was saying, like Amazon has, grew like book sales and ebooks so much, and especially like Amazon like has been integral to the boom in romance. A decade ago, when for a little bit more than a decade ago now, maybe, like when self-publishing became really big, like romance was the only sort of genre where you saw indie and self-published writers making any sort of impact in traditional publishing. And I'm sure traditional publishers would say that wasn't great, but I think all of us as authors can agree that it is great, because the more people, like we all know that romance readers are the most voracious, loyal, just prolific readers on this planet. So they're eventually going to find us. And if they find us because they started by reading, the 99-cent, books that they got on Amazon, or starting on Kindle Unlimited, then I welcome them. And I hope that I can get them to spend a little bit more money on my traditionally published book, or if they want to go to the library too, that's also great. So like, I can't really like fault Amazon for that, but yeah, like obviously we support our indies and always want to go there first if we can. But yeah, I think like Amazon has been, if we're gonna like look back on the, I have a history, I have a graduate degree in history, so I'm like, if we're gonna look back on the history of like romance publishing, then like you'd have to have like an entire, at least a chapter, maybe like a whole section on Amazon's impact.
Very
at least
true.
4 chapters.
Yeah, at least.
Very, very true. And again, like I think I feel many romance readers and writers know this. There's just so many subgenres to romance, and such as YA, there's fantasy, there's mysteries, there's just historical romance, and there's just so much. And one of the things that I love as someone who appreciates something, something juicy, something with a little drama, especially when we're on, I don't know about you guys, I love the theater. So Kate, would you like to come up and talk about the theater with me?
Oh my gosh, of course.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. We're going to talk about Here for the Drama. Okay, so would you like to tell the audience a little briefly about your book?
I just happen to have one right here.
Perfect. Me too.
So Here for the Drama is a lighthearted rom-com about my aspiring playwright, Winnie, as she travels to London, and she's sort of juggling her very demanding boss, her own artistic ambitions, and then also a secret romance, all while she's trying to carve out her place and make her mark in the wonderfully chaotic theater world.
Okay. I read it and I chills.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was just curious because when I was reading the advanced reader's copy, I definitely felt this love for the theater. And I was wondering, like, were you a theater kid, or were you similar to Winnie in a sense where that you have this affinity for the theater because maybe a loved one would take you?
It was both. I definitely fell in love with theater very young. I got into community theater when I was little, and I was just in love. And I loved it so much. And then I kept at it. And then I did it in high school. But I went to like one of the largest New York City high schools. So there were like star quality performers in that school. And I was not one of them by any means. So like I would be in the background, or I would just do tech and backstage work. And I always loved it so much, especially working backstage, because I was more on the quiet side. So I just kind of got to be there and listen. And the theater kids were the funniest, most wonderful people ever. And I would cry laughing every day because they were just so incredible. So anytime I thought of the theater, it was just these warm, happy, like beautiful memories that I always had growing up. And then living in New York, I'm a huge fan of musical theater. I've been to an obscene amount of musicals. I just can't get enough. I may have seen Phantom seven times. I think I'm at 7. And it's just something about going to the theater, you know, the excitement, the thrill, and your mind just drifts off, you know, for a few hours and you're lost in this world. It's very much like reading a book, but it's, you know, live in front of you instead of in your mind. And I just love the theater so much. So when I sat down to write my second book, I remember asking myself, you know, what do I love the most that I want to write about and think about at all hours of the day for the next year? Because, you know, by the time you're writing and then you're editing and promoting, it's like a solid year. And so I immediately thought theater, London, romance. And so this book is truly, I don't want to say I wrote it for myself, but it's the book that I wanted to read, and I just love it.
That's the best kind, I think. I think, what was it? Maya Angelou said something to the effect that if you have an untold story, I forgot the exact quote, but I think that it's definitely a love story to theater, to London, to just, so I think you did a fabulous job. Actually, I wasn't a theater kid, but I was in a drama club back in, middle school, and it was a Shakespearean one. I played Friar Lawrence in Romeo and Juliet, and I slapped Romeo and Juliet's hands when they were about to embrace. I'm like, no, don't. I forgot the exact line, but it was before the wedding. I'm like separating it too, and I just followed my instinct. I guess. I guess.
That's
it's a Leo energy. I think it's like I have to
You're so lucky. I'm a little obsessed with Romeo and Juliet. You can't see it, but I have like 7 separate. Anytime I see a version, I just always get it. And we had to take public speaking in college, and I actually did my speech comparing the 1968 version to the
beautiful
the Leo and Claire Danes version. So we could talk Romeo and Juliet anytime.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think I hear you about editions, because I keep buying, as I said, I studied folklore, so I will find the Odyssey, for example. I'm like, oh, this is such a great edition. I have to keep it. So I totally hear you on that. My second question for you is that what I noticed about Winnie, again, another character I resonate, and I'm going to I'm going to try to not repeat this, but every single character I resonate with you guys. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, they're calling me out. It's a reflection in the mirror. But with Winnie is that I see that with her, secret forbidden romance. Now hearing that you love Romeo and Juliet, I'm wondering if that was what you were modeling after, especially since that in a way, Juliet is, at least my interpretation and understanding. I also took a course on Shakespeare for fun, but Juliet is this, as you know, is this young girl who is, her parents want her to marry her cousin, and that she's attracted to Romeo. They're in this, in my opinion, dumb fight, the Capulets and Montagues. So it's this, I'm just curious, like how to write a forbidden romance, like, do you need do you feel that a foundation is needed? Because I did get a glimpse of Romeo and Juliet, especially a certain scene at a certain theater in London. So I'm curious about
It's so funny that you say that, because I didn't like intentionally write it like that, but maybe now I'm thinking maybe subconsciously I did, because I love Romeo and Juliet, and I always just think like, man, if it would have ended happily, it would have been perfect. So maybe that was me trying to write my own happy ending to the story that I love so much.
Oh, I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you. It was not intentional.
Okay. Because I was just like, oh, this reminds me of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, that's like the best compliment. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll take it.
Okay, thank you. Because I was just curious, and I think it's leading to a question for everybody. So thank you so much, but feel free to answer this first if you want. Is that, so this is actually a kind of for me, but if, as a gigantic folklore nerd, and as well as, although I'm not a theater kid, I love the theater. I was wondering, is there a tale, a myth, a play that you would love to render, or a retelling? And personally, I would love to do Papa Bois and Mama Glow, who are Caribbean, particularly Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Italian Frog Princess, which is a wonderful tale. I'm happy to tell you guys all about it later. So I'm wondering for you guys, like, and Kate, feel free to answer this first, or whoever, is there a rendering from a favorite story you would like to retell?
Someone else can go first. I'm having like a brain freeze.
Please,
I'm trying to think. But it's such a great question. I'm trying to think.
I do Robin Hood.
Robin Hood?
Because you can do like a badass girl who can like shoot a bow and arrow. You can do a guy in tights. That's perfect. You could do both.
Love it.
I love that.
That's really all I need.
I love that. I have a book, Maid Marian. I loved Robin Hood too. I have this book, Maid Marian. That was like the first piece of fiction that I found about Robin Hood, and I was so excited to see it.
Oh
I read like a bunch of histories. They're like, obviously, because like Robin Hood starts like as this oral history back in like the 11th century, and then like the 19th century, like they start to like put these start to write these histories down. So they're like not quite, they're sort of like what the rich elite people of the 19th century thought Robin Hood was about, but he was like actually kind of an a-hole, and like not the like really cool like sort of like working class hero. Like he was a little bit, but mostly like he just wanted to steal from you, and he didn't really care if you were rich or not. But yeah, I would probably like make him a bit of an a-hole, but with a heart of gold.
But a lovable one.
Yeah.
Oh, love it.
Also, like with the badass girl.
Oh yeah,
who's gonna put him in his place.
Absolutely.
Please write it. I'll pre-order it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And he can only wear tights. That's the only.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Only tights. Sorry.
No, please, no. Okay. I'm with Kate on this one. Please, pre-ordering even long before you conceive.
I'm ready.
Oh, go for it.
Oh no, I mean I'm ready to pre-order.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
okay, that too. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, please. There's just so many stories, and as much as I love to see the same thing over and over again, it's just I'm really excited for the upcoming live action Little Mermaid. I think it looks fun. I'm looking forward to it, but there's just so many other stories, in my opinion, that I wish would have recognition or a new interpretation. So I'm just curious if you, or maybe I'm the only one, and it's fine because I'm just very picky. So, go for it, Farrah.
Mine would be, and I think this is probably my feminist thing coming out, but it's like I want Lysistrata or Stephanie's Lysistrata. It just seems like where we are in this, we need like a modern telling of it. We are just, that's not really a romance. It would be a romance.
No, it's fine. It doesn't have to be.
But I just, I think we read that maybe in high school or maybe my freshman year of college or something like that. And it's just, it seems like we haven't been in a time just like in society where we need that story told more. It just seems like the perfect time to have a modern day telling of it, and maybe it'll wake some people up. I don't know.
Oh no, I love it. And again, like I will order it. Like, let me know. I'm ready. Okay, anyone else would like to share? Of course, you can keep it within yourself, and then just let me know. Just DM me. You have my Instagram. Just let me know. Which reminds me, if anyone wants to know more about our offers and follow them on their social media, you can find it on our events listing. So please do. You won't regret it. But I mean, high key, low key, mid key. Please do DM me and say like, I have this idea.
No, I'll tell you, I have an idea, and I am going to write it when I have time. I really want to write a Cyrano story. Like, and I have the idea in my head, and I love it already. I just have to find the time to write it. So
please do, because I watched the recent movie and I loved it. I watched it with one of my best friends. We loved it. We were crying hysterically. And at the same time, we can talk about this another day, but it was just this sense of like, why didn't you do this? And so I'm really excited. Really excited. Okay. Thank you. Definitely. See, this is imaginary wish list, like these free books and any others.
Yes, and I don't know that there's one that I'm dying to retell because I feel like they all live inside me, all my favorite stories, like the fairy tales of the six swans that Juliette Marillier did so beautifully, Daughter of the Forest, or, the Greek stories of Achilles and Circe that Madeleine Miller did, I have reread them so many times that they're inside me. And one of them is persuasion. I feel like in all my stories, in one way or another, I read about that second chance romance. And there is, even if it's a text message, a version of the letter at the end, that clears everything out. I think that's one of my favorite stories ever since I read Persuasion when I was young. I don't know, I just love the idea that sometimes love is not, it's the right person, but it's not the right time, and they both have to grow until they have a second chance. And sometimes they don't get that second chance, but I think it's magical when they do.
We love angst. I think that's another thing. Angst is cathartic. So yeah, no, definitely. So many great ideas.
Yeah, and we were talking about how people look down on romance, but Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, that is a romance, if there ever was one, about two people having their persuasion moment when love finally happens at the end of life when they're both super old. So it's those archetypes that humans keep daydreaming about, and it brings a lot of satisfaction when it works out, even if they're both super old.
No, definitely. I have to reread that book. So the first time was in college, my sophomore year, I would say. And it was just, I was again, NYU, and I was sitting in, the Washington Square Park, the fountain. I was just reading, and it was a, an Indian summer, but, very hot, but at the same time, weirdly cool, just perfect weather, in my opinion. And there was some, I don't know, it made the book even more, I don't know, it was just the right time to read that book because I felt my emotions were heightened. I was like, yes, I have to reread it. So thank you for the reminder. And please do, again, if anyone has rendering, please let me know. I will buy the book. Or I could be your advanced reader copy, but readers, but don't worry about it. No pressure. Okay. As we just discussed, yes, there's angst and there's different varying emotions that leave us satisfied with a story, even though romance novels do oftentimes have a happily ever after. Sometimes reality gives this cathartic message. However, I kind of want some sweetness now. I'm a little bit hungry, and in particularly for cupcakes. So Jamie, would you like to come up and talk to me?
I think I have a copy of the book somewhere and I don't know what I did with
It's okay.
it.
I have a copy right here, actually, next to here for the drama and the romance recipe. Ooh, don't fall. Here you go.
Yeah, so Fake It Till You Bake It is about 3 football players who open up a cupcake shop during the off season. And the hero, he's kind of like the businessman behind the whole thing. And the heroine she went on a reality TV show very similar to The Bachelor. And she made it all the way to the end, but she turned down the proposal. So now America hates her for breaking the guy's heart. They think she's cold and heartless. And the meet cute is actually, she walks into the cupcake shop. She's all kind of down and depressed. And she starts talking crap about the cupcake shop. And she doesn't realize that the owner, Donovan, is standing right behind her. And he's already having a bad day, so he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you talk crap. I'm trying not to curse. He's not gonna let you talk crap about
This is an open discussion, don't worry.
So they end up, because it's a romance novel and things have happened, they end up fake dating to restore her reputation as well as to boost sales for the cupcake shop. And hilarity ensues.
Oh yeah, and it's very steamy. So yeah, and I thought what I loved about the book is that it is a classic opposites attract with enemies to lovers situation. And we spoke about this before. Jada is impulsive. She's kind of stuck up, or at least appears to be. And Donovan is uptight yet very charming. And so my question is, with all their depth, walls, and softness, how did you step into your characters' minds to create them? What was the process of creating realistic characters that are I don't want to say flawed, but yes, but likable too?
Well, the first answer to that is I have no idea. But really, honestly, but I do go into it thinking I want to write real characters who are flawed. I don't want to write perfect characters. So I that's a very conscious thought in my head as I'm creating these people. What does make them not perfect? What makes them relatable? And then, I kind of just form them in my head, like who do I want them to be? Like I always knew I wanted Jada to be like the impulsive type, and I knew I wanted Donovan to be kind of uptight. But then you start thinking about, okay, well, what makes them that way? What happens in their past to make them that way? And in a lot of my stories, probably all of them, it's family stuff, how they grew up, their parents, what happened to them as children, and that informs as they grow up And then you go into the technical aspects of writing, which, you know, we start throwing around things like wound and the essence of the character and all that jazz. So I answer all those questions like, who are they now? Who do I want them to be at the end of the story? How can I get them there? What obstacles do I give them throughout the story so they can have their character arc?
Yeah. And I thought brilliantly, I can't pronounce things. Like wonderfully done there. I could pronounce something. Wonderfully done, because I was just, not to give anything away, but their dynamic is just this sense of like their tension is just so vivid and understandably so because of their their first impressions.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I thought was kind of funny was that they have this common mutual contact, which is Grams or Mrs. T. Grams is, to the audience, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Jamie, Grams is the grandmother of Jada, but she's also basically the boss of Donovan and the other two football players. In the sense,
she owns the football team.
Exactly. And so I thought it was really, what I love about romance books is that there always seems to have this, whenever or not we believe in fate, there's always in romance book this sense of like what comes around goes around sort of sense. Like they kind of there's this strong magnetic pull, and sooner or later they're going to connect. So I find that I just, it's one of my favorites, especially since Jada, she's just so embarrassed by their initial interaction, which for good reason.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was so funny. It's a hilarious book.
Thank you.
No, yeah. Another question I have, and it's food related because I'm pretty hungry, but is a sense of that, did you make up the recipes for the cupcakes, like the apple crumble, the peanut butter chocolate cupcake? Because what I find it's great, speaking of from a slightly related to a previous question, is that although food is yes, it's community and love, but oftentimes when we think of chefs, it's a male dominated field. So when we hear of like, oh, it's a football player baking, it's suddenly this sense of like, what? He's baking, so I thought it was really interesting that you have Donovan and the other two football his friends, his colleagues, being so passionate about baking, and honestly it sounds good.
Thank you. Well, I mean, from that, again, that goes back to building the characters. Like I asked myself, why in the world would 3 football players open up a cupcake shop? Like, so I kind of built backstories for each one of them, why it was important for them or why they said yes to the crazy idea. Mm-hmm. As far as the actual flavors in the book, that was like a combination of just going to cupcake shops and seeing what they have, what flavors they have, internet research, like, seriously, Google search cupcake flavors. And then, but for me, I'm like, I always feel bad when people ask me about this. It's like, I don't cook.
I'm sorry.
I completely faked it in the book. Completely. Yeah, I looked up recipes on what do you put in cupcakes? Like, okay, let me put that in there.
Very fair, because I like to I've been thinking about writing, and I love food, as you probably have guessed, but I'm like, I don't know how to cook. I do have a mom who is quite a great cook, so I usually ask her for advice. So I hear you on researching, because I don't know what a lot of terminology is, so that's great to know. And I think this is, feel free to answer this first, Jamie, but everyone else are welcome to do these. I think it's somewhat related: sweetness, tenderness, angst, and whatnot, all the flavors of romance. But my question is, do you have a controversial ship that you have a guilty pleasure shipping. And to those who don't know, shipping is basically a preferred partnership between fictional characters in books, movies, TV shows. I am happy to go first if you guys want. I am still salty about Zuko and Katara from Avatar: Last Airbender not getting together because they were so. I could go into heavy detail, and I will, but it will take a lot of time. Why? And I don't. So we're not going to go. I could, but we're going to go. That's a conversation for another time. But I'm still salty about that.
From me, yeah, I'm I think I did another Zoom last week and asked the same question. So I actually have an answer. I thought about it and I'm like, it's from the original Gossip Girl. I don't know if anyone watched the original Gossip Girl, but for like a brief moment in time, they put Blair and Dan together. And when they did, I was like, oh my God, this is everything I always wanted and never knew I could have. And, because they are very much opposites. He's like the kid from, I don't want to say, like he's considered New York poor, so to speak. He has to ride the bus to their Upper East Side school and everyone else is like, the bus. So, and she's very much the rich, stuck-up girl, Blair. And then they end up, and they hate each other for most of the series, but they ended up together for, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes, and it was the best. And I was like, yes. And then they broke them up because
So sad. I'm with you. We could talk about this another day, but like I'm with you because I'm like, I liked their dynamic as well. And of course, not to dive into Gossip Girl, especially for those who haven't watched the show or read the book series, but there are oftentimes some of the canon ships are problematic. So I kind of liked Dan and Blair as well because I thought it was, they had issues, but it was much more realistic. It was much more, they challenged each other in a respectful way, except for in the beginning. But I liked their dynamic a lot. So thank you for I feel validated for wanting that ship. Anyone else? I have more, so I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to keep going.
Before you said that, Marialuisa, I was laughing because I write for middle grade and young adult too. So a lot of my controversial ships are, from those age groups. But yes, Katara and Zuko, but also talking about Shadow and Bone, the Darkling and Aline.
Yeah.
I really like them together. Although I like Mal in the book, but the Darkling is nice.
I mean, he's who's playing him? I forgot his name, but I'm like
Ben Barnes.
I know. I can't believe I forgot his. I know. I'm sorry. So it's like I was just like, ooh, okay. Of course, this is. I'm joking. I hope everyone knows this, but I'll go into the forces of evil for him. Just like why not? Why not? Why not? Anyone else before we continue? Because I'm still quite hungry. So if anyone else would like to share their controversial ship. And feel free, audience who are listening, feel free to share your controversial ship. I would love to know personally. Okay, perfect. So as I said, I'm still very hungry. I'm a sweet tooth, but I need more. I need more substance. So Ruby, would you like to come on stage?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Ruby. This is my book, The Romance Recipe. The Romance Recipe is about a sort of hard on the outside, secretly soft on the inside restaurant owner and her new to bisexuality head chef. The two of them don't really get along because, well, Amy, the restaurant owner, is like kind of a micromanager and a control freak. And Sophie, the head chef, is kind of like, leave me the F alone. And they realize that they have to work together because the restaurant isn't doing very well. But they're also, how do I say this nicely? They're just like, they're kind of dumb sapphics, and they both have crushes on each other, but didn't know that the other one had crushes on the other one. And so all of this extra time spent together, those feelings start to rise to the surface, and they must save the restaurant and their hearts.
And it's quite a book, because I love the mutual pining and longing, and it's just when you have that slow burn. One of my favorite arcs, favorite tropes, by the way, is a slow burn. And what I loved about the book is the representation of bisexuality. It's something that we are still very much learning about. There's still are misconceptions, and I love how Sophie, who is the chef, by the way, in the book series, for again, just to clarify, and I think it's great that we have more representation, more awareness, more of this representation, which is, I'm repeating myself because it's very important. Again, there is this sense of, unfortunately, biphobia, and which you have written a few instances in some examples, and I hope you don't mind me asking, was it hard to write these scenes?
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely hard. And I think anytime, like, as a queer author, anytime you're writing queer characters, you have to make that choice for your readers. Like, do I want to expose them to that experience on the page? So I tried to, like, balance that with, like, what would I want to read? Obviously it can be difficult. One of the things that I tried, like, to be cognizant of was, like, writing, even though, Sophie does experience a little bit of biphobia, of, like, sort of reinforcing that message or the sort of message that, like, I want to hear as a bi person. So, like, a lot of what she's grappling with, because she's this sort of later in life queer, where she didn't really sort of come into herself until she was a bit older, in her 30s, is this feeling of belonging. Like, she doesn't really feel like she's a part of this community. She doesn't really always feel like she gets to wear that label, which can feel very alienating, because for a lot of people, the label is the community. Like, finally, the label is an answer to a question that, I've been trying to find the answer to my whole life. And then when you maybe don't feel like that connection to that label, because you don't feel, not necessarily welcome, but you don't understand how you fit, it can be quite alienating. So what I wanted to just try and reinforce for Sophie, and mostly for myself, was just this idea that, like, she is queer enough and she belongs here, no matter what, despite the experiences that she might be having.
First, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. And as someone who is queer, family who I'm out, I guess. So I haven't really mentioned it to my family that much, but I do consider myself queer. I don't know exactly my label, but I definitely felt this connect. Again, as I keep mentioning, I definitely understood Sophie very much, even though I may not identify, and which is completely valid. We should be safe in our identity in all ways. So I absolutely, so thank you so much. And thank you all for being patient. I had a text message from my cousin who's taking care of my dog. He's okay, but I had to, like, look at my phone for a minute. So thank you for your patience. So apologies for if I was looking distracted for a moment, but yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And what I also think that we are looking into is that we are, as I mentioned, keep mentioning that we are finding books, especially in romance, diversity, more voice representation and voices, which is, I think, is fantastic. I think romance books are one of the genres that are open to having more voices around. And I think, of course, it's not perfect. Of course, unfortunately, we are facing another pandemic of literary censorship. But I think that it's admirable to see how we have various characters who have this vulnerability, who have this journey of self-discovery and being true to ourselves. And everyone, I feel, in your books have that quality of being true to self. And I admire Sophie and Amy, who are just so, like, you know, in this male-dominated field of cooking, like facing such you know, pressure. So I was just curious about that too, the sense of like how, like, what exactly inspired you? Was there a correlation, do you feel, in a sense of like, is it like, it felt almost symbolic is what I'm trying to say, this allegory of like this odyssey is a wrong word, because odyssey means that you lost your companions and you're on your own. But this journey of it felt symbolic is what I'm trying to say. Was that on purpose?
I think that the way that I usually write is I start with character first. And when I was first coming up with the idea for this story, because Amy is the romance recipe is kind of a sequel, if you will. It happens in the same universe as my debut Hot Copy, where Amy is the twin sister of the hero in Hot Copy, Wesley. So you kind of already had a sense of her as a character. And for Amy, it was really important to me to put her in a place that is going to sort of like meet her where she's at. Amy is like ready for a fight. She's got her brass knuckles out and she's going to bare her teeth and she's probably going to bite you. So like she needed to like be in a setting where like she can like throw her elbows a little bit. And so that's kind of like why I decided to like put her in the restaurant industry, because it sucks to be a woman in the restaurant industry, unfortunately. So it just kind of like made sense in that aspect. And then to also have her love interest be someone who can, Amy, I always kind of describe them as like the grumpy one and the sunshiny one, but they're not really that. They're kind of like more the hard one and the soft one. And we're just like, Amy is like a tougher nut to crack, and Sophie is a bit more vulnerable, except for when she's in the kitchen, in which case then she's like, Amy, shut up and get out. So so it was just more of like finding a place where these two characters can like really shine, and to like really put a spotlight on their personalities.
Oh no, and it definitely shows, especially when in different ways. Like Amy is very loyal to her restaurant. She deeply cares about her people, her family, her friends, and even Sophie, even though they butt heads for a good they butt heads. And with Sophie, her food, which again sounds delicious, especially a certain dish at the end, I thought it was a great blend of personalities that are, yes, they're different, but at the same time, they're not so different too. It's almost like the sense like a yin yang of sorts, where yes, one is exteriorly, the external is hard, but there's softness, and then the other is soft outside, but hard inside. So I thought it was a fantastic concoction of that, of characters. So yeah. No, and that brings me to a question that I feel is quite, I suppose, flavorful, and it was inspired by just quizzes from BuzzFeed for a minute, for a minute. I don't know what I'm trying to say, BuzzFeed. And I have asked you guys, name 3 fictional characters that you feel best describe your personality. And I am curious to hear if it makes it easier. In speaking of flavor, we can do sweetness, bitterness, and sour. So who do you, if that makes it easier for you? If not, it's okay. Again, I feel I resonate with all of your characters in different ways. And like I said before, I felt called out in a good way. I felt seen in each and every one of yours. And if that makes it easier, feel free to pick your own original characters. I will have to say, other than your characters, I feel connected to Dr. Brennan from Bones. In many ways, I understand her, and plus Bones and Boof are just, ooh, what if, I almost wish that they didn't get together because I love their tension. But I love that they got together. Sorry for those who haven't seen Bones, but it's been out for a while, so sorry, not sorry. But I love her because she has this, she's socially awkward like me, but so I really enjoy her. Another character is, actually not a character, I resonate a lot with hobbits from Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth. So I love of food, love of merrymaking, napping, that kind of thing. And then another character, I'm going to do a villain, I think, or an anti-hero, is that my brother, if I believe he is on, I think I saw him. I love tricksters. Tricksters are my Achilles heel. It's part of my thesis. And I love Anansi, mostly because he is originated from West African, Caribbean, being half Jamaican. And I just, this sense of playfulness and pranking and whatnot. So poking the bear. So those are my free figurines. And if anyone would like to share yours, I am curious. If not, no worries.
I always say that, Sophie, I'm most like Sophie just because we both didn't realize we were queer until we were 30. But I always say that I wish I was more like that other heroines in my book, like Amy and Corinne in my debut hot copy, because they're both like really tough. They don't take any bullshit. And I always feel like the one who's like, okay, you can do whatever you want, I don't care. So I just wish I was more like them. So, I mean, it's kind of a cheat because it's not like who I'm most like, but it's ones I aspire to be.
No, not at all. I think that's completely valid. And I think that's quite, I hear you on that one. Go for it.
I actually thought about it. So from my own books, London, who is the character of the 3, mine is a 3-book series. Of the 3 girls, I identify with her the most just because she is very steady. And if you read the book, you'll see the type of person she is. Belle from Beauty and the Beast, just because her love of books, her, always her head's in the clouds thinking. But the fictional character I think I identify with the most is Olympia Dukakis's character Clary from Steel Magnolias.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm just the person that's in the corner talking about everybody else. And, it's just like, I remember from the first time I saw it, I was young when it first came out, and I was just like, that's who I aspire to be. It's just like that very, fiery wit that she has is just, yeah, Clary is like me. It's not always bad things that I'm saying. I'm just telling the truth.
Yeah,
And I'm in the corner talking. But yeah. She's me. I'm her.
Love it. Love it. It kind of reminds me of, there was actually I saw in the chat a question on Bridgerton. So similar to a certain lady of repute who is, writing
Yes.
gossip. So I totally, yeah, no, it's completely fun. Actually, this reminds me, actually a question I have for all of you to jump to another one is that, do you guys play interactive games? I've been playing Chapter, episode Choose Your Own Story, just various stuff like that. And of course, like there's a huge market of romance stories. Let me actually show you my app as well as my Kindle, which also holds the other 2 books. But it's sorry, right here, I can't see. Oh, no, let's not open it. It's quite a lot of fun. It's interactive, I said. So whatever choices that you decide, you pick out the character's fate. So I'm curious, like, I mean, of course, it's a different type of storytelling, but have you guys ever played similar? I recommend it if you want to play. Of course, I'm not going to push it, but
I can write it, but I've never played it.
Oh, no worries. I can give you recommendations if anyone wants them. Let me know, because there are a couple that are quite good. Great. Awesome. So speaking of, I think with romance, from what we're gathering, is the sense of, personalities, and especially when it comes, I think what's key is that oftentimes we are now hearing stories about how family and friends affect us in ways that are wonderful, wholesome, but also it can be, quite not so much. I mean, I think I saw a meme the other day where originally Disney movies are like, oh, there's an evil force, but now their movies are like, oh, well, our parent, generational trauma of sorts. So if Shamil, I'm ready for you if you would like to talk about your book because I feel it's strongly about family.
Yes, I that's something that also pops up in pretty much all of my books. Family and friends and community are a big part, a big character of the story itself, and sometimes even the antagonist. I never have a villain like the one big bad guy, but it's always something that affected the whole family or the whole community. And in Twice the Quinceañera, I write about Nadia, who's finally about to get married to her fiance of many years, until she finds out that he's been cheating on her for a long time. And she finds out a month before the wedding. She breaks up with him. And unfortunately, there's no time, nobody will refund her the money for the venue, or of course the dress, or all the preparations. And worst of all her family is coming from all over the world to witness the big event that the whole family had been getting ready for. And Nadia has been a perfect child, an immigrant like her whole family, but she grew up in the United States, and she became a lawyer and always had the perfect grades, always tried to do everything that she was supposed to, but she feels like she has never been celebrated. She never, because it was always her duty as the daughter to do well and to do everything perfect. So considering that she won't get a refund and the whole family is coming anyway, and she's about to turn 30 years old, and so she decides to throw herself a double quinceañera for her 30th birthday party. And the quinceañera, for those of you who are not familiar, is this big coming of age party, very popular in the Latina community. When a girl turns 15, it's like the debut or a sweet 16, and the whole family and community comes together to celebrate the girl. In the olden times, it was for the girl to finally come out into society, and now it's just a huge party. Julia Alvarez, the celebrated Dominican author, in her nonfiction book, Once Upon a Quinceañera, said that every girl should have a quinceañera, because it's that feeling of being loved and celebrated by everybody. Some people also say it's like a wedding without a groom. So it's perfect for Nadia. And to make matters worse, the owner of the venue is an old flame from her college days, for that brief summer when she was on a break from her boyfriend and then ex-fiance. So more than of course, there is that thread of love and a second chance love, and finding that person that's right for you, but in a better place in your life. But most of all, it's a story about loving yourself and accepting yourself as you are, and finally standing up for yourself. So it was a ton of fun to write. It was very fun to write about the family, how everybody reacts to this frivolity of celebrating yourself with a super huge party. In fact, there's doing research for this novel, there is a new trend, especially in the United States, of women who are throwing themselves a party like this for their double, triple, quadruple quinceañera, who never had it when they were young because the family was either new in this country and funds were short, or they invested that money for education, or the party wasn't to their liking, and so finally they decided to do it on their own terms. So it was really fun to write a story of empowerment and again healing that generational trauma, because Nadia throughout the story discovers things about her mom and sister, her friends, her cousins, and the grandmothers that she had never heard about. And in the end, it brings them all together.
Oh, and thank you so much for that, because that pretty much was my first question for you, is the sense of what is a quinceañera and the impact. And it's so true. And especially for women identified individuals, there is this pressure of, especially when you're turning 30 years old, to get married, have kids. But at the same time, it's like, oh, you can have a career, but don't waste your life, focus on that. So I thought it was an empowering read.
I'm glad to hear. And also,
I'm turning 30 in July, so I totally understand.
I love it. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
In advance.
I was like, oh.
Sometimes, again, I mentioned that I write young adult, that it's, the epitome of coming of age. But I do believe that we come of age many times in our lives. That we reinvent ourselves many times, that we don't have to decide what or who we're going to be one and just that be set in stone forever. That we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, and sometimes the dreams that we thought were the ultimate goal is not it. It's not what brings us happiness, and it's okay to change and recalculate our final destination.
Exactly. And what I loved about your book is how authentic it was to have Nadia, who is triggered by these changes at first, or rather it continues. I mean, I want you guys to figure out what happens, but the sense of of that she has to, as you said so wonderfully, this and it's a truth that we constantly do reinvent ourselves. Sorry, Freudian slip, but so I thought it was such a fantastic journey to see how she figures out what she truly wants, and through this party, or rather the party just triggers that journey. So I thought it was and again, I resonate a lot with that, because I am turning 30, and this sense of pressure from certain family members of when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? And so on and so forth. And it's like, oh, geez, calm down. I don't have a ring yet, so I don't know. So I completely resonate. And I have a feeling that so many people will too. And all of you have these great books. So it's so great again to see romance books, in my opinion, are, if not the one of the top genres that we are able to have a mirror of our truest desires, our what matters to us, and how to behave. I think there's just so much layers to romance novels, so it's always a pleasure to read it. So since you did answer my first question, which thank you so much for doing that, because that was fantastic. I couldn't say it better myself, but one of the, as you mentioned, it's a second chance novel, and that it is quite well loved, but oftentimes it can be a little bit messy, especially since Marcos, who is one of the main characters and the owner of the venue, he ghosted Nadia. And ghosting, not a lot of people like to be ghosted. I was just curious exactly, like, how did you challenge yourself to write a character who did something that many people find despicable, but yet wins our hearts, or maybe doesn't win our heart? We don't know. You have to read the book.
Well, I think we're all layered. I love to write my characters as real people, flawed, and maybe, yes, they made big mistakes in the past, and maybe, he was 20 when he ghosted Nadia. So, like a second chance romance means that we give ourselves a second chance to forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we made in the past, and that's how you change. And so, I don't know. I just like to put characters in bad situations and have them, figure out how to get out of them and how to calculate things. I think in life, the biggest challenges we have, and again, going back to that very first question of why romance is so important, I'm a firm believer that the most important relationships that we have is with our loved ones, with our friend group, with our families, with the, love interests that teach us who we really are. So I don't know, it's just fun to put people in those situations that, I've been married for almost 24 years. My experience is very different from Nadia, but it's just fun to kind of like think about what I would do in an alternate reality if that had happened to me.
No, exactly. And like you said, there are many beloved members of the family that I love, especially the great-grandmother. She reminded me of a mixture of my grandmothers. So it was lovely to have that connection to see, especially since you speaking representation, she does have, I believe, what was it, dementia or something similar. I don't recall if you mentioned it, but it's lovely to have that subtle representation of like, yeah, this is normal, this is part of life, and you did it. So again, it was wonderfully written.
Thank you.
Too. Okay. Thank you so much. And speaking of, and I think that we could jump into like, as we have various flawed characters, likable, wholesome. Sometimes they have to have a journey. And I was wondering, is there a character from your favorite romance novel who is that mixer that deserves more love and attention? Do you feel someone who probably maybe needs a book of their own someday? And I think for me personally, I would like to, well, actually, he's a character I'm not going to mention him because he's horrible, but I was going to say Mr. Wickham, not because he deserves a redemption arc. I don't think he deserves a redemption arc, but I kind of want to like see what happens to him in a way. But then again, you know what? Let's not give him the attention that he doesn't deserve. Let's move on. But someone that I would love to see going on Pride and Prejudice is Mr. Darcy's sister, Georgiana. I think she's an interesting character. I think we don't know much about her except that she loves to play the piano, and supposedly she's accomplished, but she's also very humble about it. But yeah, I have a feeling like I think she could be quite great. Maybe that's she sounds like she practices every day and she's passionate about it. And we don't know much about her. So I think it'll be interesting to see a book where we focus on her. Maybe I'll write it. I don't know. I have to look into the lingo, the historical, it's a historical romance. Or then again, maybe one of you or someone else will write it and then I'll read it and review it. So, so that's someone I would love to, who I think deserves attention. What about you guys?
I actually wouldn't mind if Timothy wrote some more books for Avery and Mateo. Just for me personally.
Thanks, Ruby.
Just puts you on the spot. But yeah, just because I think that they should get some stories too. They're very vibrant.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed. Anyone else would like to share? I mean, there's just so many people. I understand the problem of thinking about who we should talk about. Okay, awesome. So it brings me to Farrah. Are you ready for me? Because we're going to talk about, speaking of slightly, flawed, complicated characters, we're going to talk about London and Drew. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So so I have it on my, similar to Twice a Quinceañera, it's on my Kindle right here. So it's never far away from me. The Hookup Plan is the third book of your series, which is it's the final book of the Boyfriend Project, correct?
Yeah.
And what I loved about the series, including in the final installment, is that there is a strong female identified friendship group. And how it starts is quite, for those, I hope you don't mind me stating so, but it starts with that they were dating the same guy. And what I loved about it is that how easily it could have been a book or a series where they can turn each other, but no, it is this strong relationship, and they're ambitious, they're confident, they are passionate about who they are, they're about their jobs and whatnot. And I was wondering that having this strong support system, is this something that you envisioned from the beginning? And feel free to talk about what the Hookup Plan, before
like you said, it pretty much starts in the Boyfriend Project, when the very first scene, when the girls all meet, because they do find out via Twitter that they are all dating the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they confront him while he is on a date with one of them that is live tweeting her date from hell with the guy. And of course, as things tend to do, their confrontation with him goes viral. And they have their 15 minutes of infamy, but they also become like this close group of friends, and they decide that they are going to put their whole journey to find a significant other on the side and work on themselves for 6 months, because they discover that they all had things that they had put on the side to because they were so focused on dating. But in the first two books, of course, those girls, they find love. They kind of get the things that they were looking for as well, but they didn't adhere to the no men for 6 months rule. And in London's book, she is a pediatric surgical resident. She's kind of this hotshot doctor, and she's very much a workaholic. Her thing that she wanted to work on was actually to just find a hobby, because so much of her life revolves around the hospital. She does nothing to decompress. But her two friends thinks that what she really needs is just to hook up with someone, because she's also been on a bit of a drought. So they think that's the thing that she should do the most. And in the Hookup Plan, which is, perfect title for that book, she hooks up with someone at her 15-year class reunion who happens to be her arch nemesis from high school. He was her academic rival. They were co-valedictorians, and she hates him because she always wanted to be the best at everything. And you can't necessarily be the best when you're a co-something. So she thinks he's the perfect person for her to hook up with, because she would never, fall for him. She hates him. So it's kind of an enemies to lovers. For him, it's kind of a second chance, because he's always, of course, loved her. She had no idea. But she finds out that what she thinks is just going to be a one night stand turns into something different because he sticks around because he's actually working at her hospital. And it's, they tend to hook up a lot more. That's the name of the book.
And see what happens next when you read the book. So I personally love a good enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers story. Of course, for me, there's certain steps, and like many other tropes, many other arcs, it can get messy too. And I was wondering, especially for any aspiring romance writers out there, what are the benefits of, first of all, like how did you balance such a trope that could easily become messy? And I guess my second question that aligns with it is like, what are the storytelling benefits of it? Like, for example, again, Zutara should have happened. So many storytelling lines, possibilities that could have been epic. It didn't happen, but that's why we have fan fiction. So that's okay. I have my fan fiction. But so I'm curious exactly what are the benefits of why Enemies to Lovers is such a great arc, but also like, well, how do you make it whole, I guess, healthy, make it in a sense that it's, if it makes sense.
Well, I know one of the challenges with Enemies to Lovers, and especially with this book, was making the characters both likable, because it's very easy to get into, they're enemies, so they have to be mean to each other. So you have to give them a good reason for that, that the readers will buy into. And you also, again, need to make them likable. I think the motivation behind why they hate each other, and for London, she hated him from high school, but it wasn't about Drew at all. It was actually because there's a lot that goes into with her relationship with her dad.
Yeah.
It was really her dad is the reason that she hated Drew. And I'm not spoiling my own book here.
Oh yeah, no, right. I spent
just know that it goes much deeper into, she has not kept this 15-year, hatred towards him just because she is kind of that person. But it really did go a lot deeper for her. And I think that's the thing that you have to balance when writing. It's just making sure that you have a very good motivation behind why the characters feel the way they do. And, hopefully it does not feel forced. But I think that also goes into just making them authentic people. We are messy people, just in general. So I'm also like a psych major. So I love getting into like personality and just really, I do way more work than I probably should on character development. But it helps when you're, as you're writing the book, if you know that character, it just makes it easier. So I think, if you're going to write Enemies to Lovers, that's my best piece of advice, is just to make sure that hate they have towards each other it's justified to the reader. The character themselves, they're not going to, they won't know really why they hate this person, especially at the start of the book, but you have to make sure that the reader knows that, why they feel this way.
Oh, definitely. And so again, sorry for bringing this up, but Zutara, there's also a situation with the dad. So when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's what happened too. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think if I may add to this is that I personally love enemies to mutual understanding and respect, to allies, friendship, then lovers. I think oftentimes personally people mistake enemies to lovers as this, they just, it can be messy. I admit that. There are some that I don't quite ship at all or quite understand, but I think oftentimes people they like the forbidden love aspect, which is quite sexy. We're not gonna lie. It's fun. It's fun to read. But with Enemies to Lovers, yes, you have this layer, but yet it becomes this, in my opinion, this platform where they can open up to each other.
Yeah.
At least that's the kind I like.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing with this book, because I love enemies to lovers is my favorite trope. But with London's book, what made it a lot more fun to write is that they are enemies to lovers, but they are also hooking up from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of the hate going around. So it's still kind of sexy and fun, but she still hates him for a good bit. And she hates, even as she starts to, you know, catch feelings for him, she hates that she's doing that, because this is, you know, she's painted him as this villain in her mind, because it was easier to have him as this villain. She hadn't seen him in 15 years than to, you know, really address what it was. So yeah, it messes her up that she is now seeing this person that she has had these, you know, that she's hated all this time as a real person, and not just this villain that she made him out to be. So yeah, it was fun to write.
Oh no, it's a well-beloved trope too. I mean, friends to lovers are great, and childhood best friends, and there's also the aspect of fake dating and whatnot. They're all great tropes, but enemies to lovers is definitely up there for sure. And actually, a great enemies to, or rather rivals to lovers with a splash of marriage of convenience, fake engagement, and whatnot. Well, actually, they did get married, but it kind of implies a little bit. It kind of is a Caribbean heiress in Paris by Adrian O'hara. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. She sends your regards to everybody. But if you love a historical fiction where you have people of color and LGBTQIA plus representation, because they get not a lot of people know this, but not people think that they just never existed. They existed in the 20th century. I don't know. It's something that a lot of people think, but no, we existed for a real long time. So if you like a bit of Caribbean too, this is such a great book. And again, like I consider this an enemies to lovers in the sense that there is a legacy of although she wasn't enslaved, there is this legacy of colonization. And our hero, even Sinclair, who's Scottish, who is quite handsome, has that legacy where he unfortunately has that background. However, what I think is so great is that he has misgivings and he learns, or we'll see, who knows? You have to read the book to figure out what happens. But I want to give a shout out to Adrian O'Hara as a Caribbean heiress in Paris, because it's such a great book. She wanted to be here, and that if you want to read another fantastic enemies to lovers stories with such clash of personalities, I suggest this one too. There you go. Anyway, I see that we have questions. And one of the questions is actually, speaking of historical fiction, is have you guys watched or read Bridgerton, and what were your thoughts on Bridgerton? Ruby, I see your face. Wait, what's wrong?
I don't want to okay. Love Bridgerton. I think Bridgerton is a great gateway for a lot of people who have not read romance or have not engaged with romance as a genre before. I think the Bridgerton Netflix series is a fantastic way for people to do that. I think a lot of times, especially in romance, we get those moments like 50 Shades of Grey was back in 2012, 2013 was this moment where quote unquote, I guess technically it's romance, even though the first book is not, but that's a completely different conversation. But, we get this huge influx of readers because they started here. And so same thing with Bridgerton. I think it's really great for that. Do I, as a romance first author, do I think that Bridgerton is the like best representation of a romance novel put to screen? I would say probably not. I think that Shonda Rhimes did exactly what she is so amazing at, which is like taking something already consumable, but like making it like delicious and addictive, and like injecting that drama into it that probably, to be fair, wouldn't have like translated onto screen as well. But I like Bridgerton, but I would like encourage every single person who's watched Bridgerton, and even if they liked it like a tiny, tiny little bit, to come into the historical romance novels that are being written right now. There are a number of amazing books by a number of amazing authors, a lot of queer, Black, Indigenous, people of color who are writing amazing historicals, and then you can like come on into contemporary and fantasy and sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. So like, welcome, we're so happy to have you. There's so much more to discover. You're not going to have time to watch any more Bridgerton because you're going to be reading. So
definitely, and I think that's perfectly said. The problem with previous historical fiction is that it can be problematic. It can be, especially when you highlight, for example, people of color. I had to put down some books due to this aspect of enslaved and master, which I think, frankly, it's quite appalling. I don't think it's romantic at all. And they try to make it like, oh, but he secretly doesn't like to be a master. And it's like, then free her. like free her, and I can go on about this, but that's a conversation for another time. But yes, I absolutely agree. Read recent historical fiction, especially by diverse voices. Another question that we have, I hope you don't mind me asking, because I think it's very important, is also in regards to representation. We have various authors coming up that are on who have, that promote mental health awareness, who talk about body shape and whatnot, which are quite, again, wholesome, authentic, and wonderful. Actually, a great book that I loved. I don't quite remember the author, but it's called The Love Con, which is about this young woman of color who wants to be a famous cosplayer and an influencer. She's quite great at it. However, she faces quite controversy because of her race and her body shape, which I think frankly is quite dumb. So but it's unfortunately a real situation in the cosplaying community where people of color and people of various shapes face, which again, frankly, very dumb. I'm putting it mildly. I'm trying to behave. I wanted to be a cosplayer, and I was told that I could never cosplay anyone because I didn't look like them. So I'm salty. So so that's why. So I guess my question is, like, how do we how can we go from characters who are considered, how do we write characters of different body shapes and different, minds and so on, who are like, not who are, like, how do we write real people? I guess. What is your advice?
I mean, that's a big question, right?
It's a huge question. I am so sorry. It's a loaded question.
I mean, it's, because how can you not write real people? I don't know. I guess because, again, maybe I've got my psychology bias going. It's like,
oh, please tell
and
us.
I guess some people do write, they write into the stereotypes. So we do see that. So I'm probably not the best one to answer this question, because that's always been like one of my the very first thing I do is try to make my characters as authentic as possible, no matter what. So I don't even know how to write any other way. Yeah. So,
and I think you all do a great job. No, I seriously, it's quite, like everyone, every single character that you have, or your main characters especially, are realistic, real people. And I think that similar to other themes in mine of romance, where people are we're opening up to it, but we still have a lot of work, but the sense of our body shapes are people have different body shapes. That's natural. Sex is natural. So I think it's this, I think for me, if I may, I think what I'm getting from you is a sense of like, it's who we are.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I'm getting. And I think it's quite valid and true. Thank you all so much. I know that this is a conversation that I would love to continue, and maybe we will. And I want to say a round of applause to all of our offers. Like, thank you so much. Please definitely go to your local indie bookstores, or if you must go to Barnes & Noble and Amazon, please do. Go to your local libraries, demand these books, and I hope you get to read them, because they have wonderful characters, stories that are wholesome and carry true representation. And I can go on and on and on, and I can, but again, we are concluding. So thank you so much. I hope you all come to the library, whenever it's virtual or in person. Do both. You're always welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great night.